Welcome back. I'm Dan,
And I'm Joe.
and today we're going to talk about a topic that seemingly had been talked to death until recently. Now there's a new light on an old topic, and that's what, Joe?
It is the former president, JFK. It's revelations from the declassified Kennedy assassination documents. And Dan is right. This topic has been beaten to death. It's been subject of conspiracy theories for many, I would say, decades upon decades, generation to generation. Um,
Over 60 years.
Many believe the day the American people lost the government was the day President Kennedy was assassinated. There have been a lot of wild theories. Over 80,000 documents have been released. We broke this down to the five biggest revelations. Dan, obviously, earlier, about a week ago, the Trump administration released thousands upon thousands of files related to the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Grandson, Jack Schlossberg, was a critic of this decision. So there are critics out there, folks. To be fair, we got to mention that. He believes it is a lot sadder than the myth, a tragedy that didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
And, go ahead.
I mean, can you believe this? Apparently, the CIA knew about Lee Harvey Oswald, but did nothing. I mean, for those who don't know, Lee Harvey Oswald went to go live in the Soviet Union. He defected for a while, but they let him come back, and they saw him as no threat. But no, he should have been on their radar.
Oh, well, the first point that brings Dan, we segue to our first point. Oswald was a poor shot. The biggest headline related to JFK's assassination was about shooter Lee Harvey Oswald. There was a document dated November 20th, 1991. It was reported from a Russian KGB official, confirmed that Oswald was at no time an agent controlled by the KGB. According to the document, the KGB agent doubted that anyone could control him, but noted that the KGB watched him closely and constantly while he was in the USSR.
Yeah, the KGB, they were there. They, of course they did. They thought he might be a spy.
Oswald had a very rocky relationship with his Soviet wife. These KGB files noted. Oswald, indeed, it was confirmed, was a poor shot when he tried target firing in the USSR. So what can you tell us about Oswald, Dan, and what else was found in these files?
Well, before I get into that, I'm a little skeptical about the claims he was a poor shot because he was in the Marine Corps before, and they say every Marine is a rifleman.
We're talking in the files, okay? And there was a documentary on a History Channel by a former Marine sniper expert saying there's no way he could have hit that shot. Now, neither here or there, the CIA documents reveal he was a poor shot. Now, whether he was, maybe you're right. Who knows? They could be lying. I don't know, but I always believe myself. Now, maybe you disagree. I believe he was a poor shot. But explain why you don't think he was. It's okay.
Because they say every Marine is a rifleman, and everyone who graduates boot camp in the Marine Corps is at least successful. Yeah,
that is true. But usually how it works. And if someone's working behind a desk, now I don't know about back then. Like there's people in the Marines that are admin clerks. They go do their rifle qual once or twice a year. Doesn't make everyone a marksman shooter. Not everyone gets that badge. Again, though, I was in the Navy. I worked alongside a lot of Marines. But back in 1959, maybe they were strict. The pre-assassination file on Oswald, when he hung out in the Soviet Union for a while, and this is from Marguerite D. Stevens of the Office of Security with her initial thoughts here. The file also ignored that Oswald returned to the U.S. in 1962, and he began associating with pro-Castro groups. Now, could he have been a poor shot or a better shot than you think? Obviously, President Kennedy was dead, so obviously I'm not going to discount your theory, but my personal belief from where he took the shot, and there's sort of that the CIA is confirming, and even KGB agents. Yeah, they thought they thought he wasn't that good of a shot from their information. That's all I'm trying to say.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. But apparently, after he returned to the U.S., he went to Mexico and he frequented both the Soviet and the Cuban embassies. And he was under the CIA's watch then, but still they failed to alert the Secret Service about his movements despite knowing that he had Soviet ties. Now,
Yes.
some people say the CIA was complicit, others say it was just plain negligent, but I don't know. When it comes to national security like that,
Well, the second thing revealed in this file, Kennedy aide Arthur Schlesinger Jr. was extremely critical of the CIA. There was a 15-page memo included in the files titled CIA Reorganization. And basically, this was written in the wake of the Bay of Pigs plan. It was already public, supposedly, minus one redacted section. Now the public section included a plan to break up the CIA and giving control of covert activities to the State Department. This obviously never happened. That obviously never happened. But here's an interesting fact, Dan. 47% of the political officers during this time period serving in United States embassies were spies.
oh yeah, just 40%. I'm kind of surprised.
This was the biggest revelation in Schlesinger's memo. However, is how many State Department employees were covert CIA operatives. Per the New York Times, Mr. Schlesinger described how roughly 1,500 supposed State Department employees were actually undercover CIA officers who sometimes operated at odds with U.S. ambassadors. So I found that interesting. Dan, anything to add to that?
Yeah. Here, even years before, back in 2006, have you ever been to the Kennedy Memorial site in Dallas?
Yes.
So I have too. Did it imply when you were there? Did you see what I saw, where it showed at least 5 different theories, and they were so concrete? One insisted it was CIA, another said the FBI, another one said it was LBJ.
Yeah.
Another said it was the Soviets, another said it was Castro, and some suggest that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone gunman, but they all said that every source had their solid reasons of why they wanted to do it.
And obviously, again, we talked about a few minutes ago, the KGB monitored Oswald. They claimed they had no interest, but for someone who had no interest, they monitored him quite a bit from 1959 on through 1963. Again, this is an interesting, obviously, you heard his name so much throughout history. So, this challenges the narrative also that the KGB had no role in the assassination. This is another a theory. If they were so disinterested, why come they had extensive contact? This contradicts the KGB's claim that claimed Oswald was not normal and should leave, yet they maintained a file on him and had agents interact with him repeatedly. Could Oswald have been a pawn in a larger Cold War game? That's a theory. Who knows?
Yeah, I've wondered that myself. I mean, didn't he claim he was the fall guy, or at one point?
Yeah, some did at one point. Now, archaeological, there was some footage of the USSR in the 1960s and a reenactment of Oswald meeting students. And there's a bunch of allegedly scans of KGB documents. But again, there was a soundtrack where the Soviets were trying to do a documentary about this and recreate a meeting. Again, we talk about Oswald has been, you've heard his name so much since 1963, since Kennedy was assassinated. Now, there's also in these 80,000 documents details of CIA operations. Throughout the file, previously redacted information on CIA operations that were declassified, including details about agents involved in the 1961 assassination of Raphael. Let me see if I can pronounce his name properly. Raphael Toriso. And I apologize if I butchered his last name. Another memo released lists the various ways the CIA basically exceeded its charter. This is per the New York Times. Break-ins at the French consulate in Washington, D.C., parliamentary attacks on Chinese nuclear facilities, injections of contaminating Soviet agents in Cuba, in Cuba, sugar bound for the Soviet Union. So these CIA methods are detailed throughout the documents. And again, there's 80,000 and 80,000 documents, folks. Obviously, I don't have time to read through 80,000. I read the highlighted areas. What about the CIA? And we just touched on it, but again, we'll go deeper into the CIA's anti-Castro plots. And there was a
Yeah,
possible motive.
Joe, and before we get into that, Joe, do you know about Operation Northwoods?
Yes.
Okay, folks, we're not going to talk about that here today, but we'll do it for another episode. I plan to at least, and I hope you're on board with me, Joe. But anyway, yeah, they were looking for a reason to maybe invade Cuba
and to kill and assassinate Fidel Castro.
That's right. And so some speculate that it may have been a false flag, that they were trying to frame Castro so they could invade and assassinate him, because it had only been like 4 years, almost 5 years since the United States lost Cuba as an ally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it also gives us what are the morality of these covert operations. Obviously, at the time, most of these agents meant it for good. Obviously, were the CIA's actions, folks, justified by national security? Now, maybe if you're alive during that time period, because look, the Cold War was heightened. And there was a lot of threats of nuclear war between the United States and Russia. Like my mom would tell stories about nuclear war, nuclear drills, going hiding under the desk. They would do these drills in school all throughout the late 50s and early 60s. Yeah, your parents probably know about that, Dan.
Yep, they told me they had to do that, and then I saw that footage from the 1950s called Duck and Cover. I thought South Park had made that up, but I learned that was a parody of what went on in the 50s. They actually believed that getting under your desk and covering your head you might be able to survive a nuclear blast.
Now, here is something else that I'm surprised the media hasn't touched on this when I was looking for 5 things. The relationship between the CIA and the Vatican. The offhand mention of CIA director at the time was John A. McCombs dealing with the Vatican and the current Pope at that time. It raised some eyebrows within certain quarters of the CIA. So, per a 1973 memo from a CIA employee released in these files, there was some meetings with the Vatican. And of course, their details remain sketchy. A senior analyst at the National Security Archive said, this opens a door on a whole history of corroboration between the Vatican and the CIA, which could be explosive if we could get documents about it. So we do know many believed that there's hidden documents. There's a theory. There's a lot more documents about this particular relationship between the CIA and the Vatican. So nothing surprises me anymore, Dan.
Not me either.
Now, what about missing evidence? Many believe there's missing evidence and a possible cover-up. Many people believe there's still documents hidden. There's evidence. Many people believe that the CIA is still reluctant to release information. There's always going to be people that believe, there's a massive cover-up. How about the committee to investigate assassination state that the release of physical evidence like FBI lab reports, X-rays, autopsy photos, microscopic slides, blood-staining clothes, President JFK's brain could clarify the events of November 22nd, 1963. This could potentially validate the Warren report. Yet this evidence still remains hidden, fueling skepticism about still leaving many people understandably. They're skeptical.
But I also wonder if the CIA's actions were justified by national security, what does that say about the ethics of power? I mean, when does the pursuit of security become a license for murder?
Well, this is a philosophical take reflecting on the nature of secrecy, with a quote from, obviously, Soren Kierkegaard: "The truth is a trap. You cannot get it without it getting you." And one of President JFK's most famous speeches was how he found secrecy repugnant. If governments hide evidence, are they protecting us or themselves? Now, I got to be honest with you. I believe in this case, they're protecting themselves. The American public deserves to know he was our president. He's part of American history. He's one of the 47 presidents of the 47 presidents. People have a right to have answers of what happened to their leader. Secrecy, yep, creates a paradox, Dan.
Well, yeah, and here's another question, philosophical question. Are we living in a world where progress is met with bullets? Actually, I think that's a rhetorical question because I think I have an answer for that one.
Now, the objective here, place JFK's assassination in the context of a broader wave of political killings. Suggests a systematic pattern of violence and conspiracy. In the 1973 Decade of Assassinations Conference, this has highlighted how the last three U.S. presidential elections, 1964, 68, and 72, many of which were influenced by what? Assassinations or attempts. Obviously, JFK was assassinated, who we're talking about.
Yeah,
1973.
that's right.
Yep.
But
Robert
but
F.
here's
Kennedy was going to run.
yeah, that's right.
1968. George Wallace
That's right.
was shot, like him or not, he was shot in 1972. What were you going to say?
He survived it. George
He
Wallace
did
survived
survive
it.
it. Yes, he
Yeah,
survived.
but here's something else too. Okay, Joe, when I see someone mistreating others, but they don't mistreat me, I still don't like to be around them. Why?
Yeah, because they're not good.
And I'm saying this, that the CIA has now, then covert, now overt, has overthrown other countries, other presidents of, the leaders stage military coups, regulation. But if they could do that to others, they could do that domestically as well.
Let's focus on the JFK files.
I was basically telling you about.
Yeah, the conference also covered global figures. Malcolm X was offed. How about Martin Luther King? He was offed.
Yeah.
And a guy that's controversial, Dan, who's that other guy? We've talked about it. You've talked about him in a video.
Which guy? Wait, which guy? Which controversial guy?
After Martin Luther King, he was some people wear his shirt. A lot of people wear his shirt.
Che Guevara.
Yeah.
Oh, he was definitely assassinated by the CIA.
Yes.
And that's confirmed by even the Bolivian government and the CIA itself. They assassinated him in Bolivia under then Bolivian President Rene Barrientos. Yeah.
So who fired the fatal shots? This conference asked why has there been such a concrete effort, Dan, to withhold the facts about JFK? Even with these 80,000 files that are released. Yeah, we learned about the CIA. Is anything really shocking?
Only the fact they would do it so openly. This is where the only thing that shocks me, well, not really anymore at this point, but I thought if they were going to assassinate, they would probably do it by means of poisoning or saying he died of a heart attack or a stroke or something of that nature, instead of having him shot in front of a bunch of people live on national TV.
Right.
And after the mayor of Dallas had redesigned his route, you heard about that, right? The mayor of Dallas. And so, if you want my honest thoughts, I think it's a way of saying, hey, you want to cross us? This could happen to you too.
Well, I think about the quote by from Thomas Hobbes on this philosophical quote: "The condition of man is a condition of war of everyone against everyone. If assassinations are a tool of power, what does that say about the state of humanity, folks?" So when we're talking about exploring this idea of assassinations, violence, it's why is there assassination? It's a mechanism of control. So to talk to the viewers, are we living in a world where progress is met with bullets?
Hey, I already asked that question. Yeah,
it's worth it to bring it up again.
Yeah, the term silver or lead. You ever heard that term?
Yes.
What is it? Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't that mean when a country like the United States goes up to a new leader of a much smaller country, a peripheral country, and says, hey, in one bag is money. You be our puppet. The other bag is a gun with a bullet with your name on it. Which would you like to choose? Is that what you heard silver or lead means?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
And also, looking at the bigger picture, when you look at these files, and obviously I didn't look at all 80,000, they're out there. You can look at them now. I eventually will, little by little, read more and more of them. I've already read some of them. It's also, I find interesting, the psychology of power politics, of international relations, and how sometimes, even if you mean it for good, it can turn out bad. So,
the road to hell is paved with good intentions, they say.
well, the CIA, obviously, I believed, had pre-assassination knowledge of Oswald. The KGB had a hidden interest, as we talked about. The CIA obviously was plotting, was making anti-Castro plots.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, what I want to ask the viewers, Dan, is to dig deep into these files. Come up with your own opinion. I'm going to dig more into them eventually, the JFK files themselves. They are available, folks, at the National Archives. And the question, you have the free, especially in the United States, you have the freedom of speech to question the narratives. Don't
Mm-hmm.
question what you read. Question what's fed to you by the media. You know what? The truth, Dan, is out there, but it's up to us to find it. And
Yeah.
Dan, what do we want the viewers to do? Unless you have anything else to add.
Well, no, we want the viewers to think independently for one thing, but other than that, oh, you want me to tell them to do the outro already? We do want you to think for yourselves. Anyway, but in the meantime, Joe, do you have anything more to add?
No, there was just a few things in the future as we read more documents and look at them deeper. Maybe we'll do some more videos. But you mentioned earlier, in the future we'll do a video. There was a topic you mentioned about 20 minutes.
Project MK Ultra.
Yes, Project MK Ultra. We'll maybe in the future do one on that, like Dan recommended. That would be a good one to do, actually. But look, think for yourself, folks. If you have any comments, if there's anything you'd like us a video, leave us a suggestion. You can also email us. We have an email out there. There's many ways to get a hold of us. And Dan, what are they?
Okay, Facebook, Instagram, X formerly known as Twitter. But please also like, subscribe, share, and bang a notification bell. It makes us feel all warm inside.
All right. Well, okay. With that being said, folks, wherever you're out in the world, have a great day. Have a great night. Take care.